Hello everyone, meet me again Divya in Mrs. Nova class at Cross-Cultural Management course. Today's discussion it includes two chapters. The first is Chapter 5 Cultural Dimension and Dilemmas and Chapter 6 Culture and Style of Management. So the purpose of cultural dimension discussion is to understand the concept of value orientations, gain insight into Trompeter's 7 dimensions, explore cultural dilemmas in business, learn how to reconcile culture differences, and acquire an initial understanding of motivation theories. Without taking too long, this is our first discussions about value orientations and dimension. So, cultural theory has significantly influenced the context of management by exploring how societal norms and value affect individuals. Talcott Parson argued that the actions of the individual is deeply embedded in a social system. And according to Parson, individuals follow the rules of their society passively, with societal norms being internalized through socialization. And these norms guide people's action and help maintain social order, reducing uncertainty during interaction. Kluckholm and Stroudbeck define value orientation as a complex principle shaped by the interaction of three elements: cognitive, affective, and directive. They propose a classification of universal value orientations based on three assumptions. The first is all people face common human problems that require solutions. Second, there are many ways to solve this problem. And third, societies differ in their preferred solution. From this assumption, they identified 5 universal human problems and corresponding value orientation. First, human nature orientation views on the goodness or badness of human nature. Second, man nature orientation views on humanity's relationship with nature. Third, time orientation, perspective on past, present, and future. Fourth, activity orientation, approaches to activities such as being, becoming, or doing. Last, relational orientations, views on human relationship including individualistic and others. And all these value orientations help explain cultural difference in problem solving and management practices. Another idea of Trompeter's, he extends the ideas of cultural dimension into 7 dimensions. He rejects the idea of a single best way to conduct business, advocating instead for understanding the cultural dilemmas faced by international companies. Trompeter's 7 dimensions are grouped into 3 main categories: people, time, and environment, and 5 of these dimensions describe how humans interact with each other. Let's talk about it. Universalism versus particularism. Universalism emphasizes absolute rules, while particularism focuses on the importance of relationship. Example in the role of contract, whether they are seen as a binding, universal, or open to negotiation is particular. Individualism versus collectivism. Individualism focuses on personal goals and collectivism about value social concern. Neutral versus affective. For neutral cultures, restrain emotion in professional context, while affective cultures openly express emotion and business relationship. Specific versus diffuse. Specific relations are business focused with clear roles, while diffuse relations is where personal connections influence business dealing. Achievement versus ascription. Achievement-oriented cultures value individuals based on their performance and what they accomplish, while ascriptive culture attributes status based on factors such as age, family background, or their educational qualification. Trompeter then add 2 additional dimensions focused on time and environment. First is sequential versus synchronic time. Sequential views time as structured, and people in these cultures adhering strictly to schedule and deadlines, while synchronic time treats time as more flexible and fluid. Second is inner versus outer directed. Internal control refers to individuals that may resist external pressure and focusing on personal autonomy, while external control is people who adjusting their actions to fit external conditions. And all these dimensions help companies navigate the complexity of managing across different cultures by recognizing that each culture has its own unique solution to universal problems. After all discussion about dimension, now we discuss about innovation that have relation to with culture. Genealogy's perspective highlight the multifaceted nature innovations, emphasizing that it's not limited to product or service creation but also include advancement in management and production method. Genealogy identifies 2 key conditions. First is idea generation, so the company should be open and receptive to both internal and external influences. And the second is transformation of ideas. It's about diverse and flexible management methods that can turn ideas into practical outcomes. Now we come to the discussion of reconciling cultural dilemmas. According to Trompeners, effective reconciliation of cultural difference involves three key components: awareness, respect, and reconciling differences. In awareness, it's crucial to understand one's own culture predisposition and the potential differences with others. Second, respect is developed when one acknowledges and appreciates the unique aspect of other cultures. It can help foster positive interaction. Last is reconciliation. This is the process of integrating these differences into a coherent approach that values both perspectives. There are key insights from Trompener's models. So effective reconciliation requires mutual empathy, also need of dynamic adaptation, and it's important to maintaining cultural integrity while reconciling differences. So this is the stages of the reconciliation process. This stage breaks the process down into 5 stages, each stage with corresponding method to progress to the next stage. First is reaffirm commitment to the relationship. This method is to adopt a win-win approach that values the relationship importance to both parties. Next stage is recognize differences. This stage encourages acknowledging cultural difference, developing a global mindset, and showing acceptance. And next is a search for similarities. After recognizing differences, the focus shifts to finding common ground. And after that is synthesis, solution, or outcome stage. This stage aim is to create solutions that incorporate elements of both cultures. And after all stage, we also do review and learn for future use stage. This is the final step about reflecting on the experience and learning from it. And now we go into a session for critical thinking. So this is my case study. It's about a financial manager implemented a customer profitability system at a Swedish company in Amsterdam, which improved profitability for account manager. After the system success, the Swedish branch had asked the manager to ensure its continuity after the manager returned to the US. So the manager is not originally from Swedish, and the manager created a formal document outlining team members' individual commitment to the system and expected them to sign it. However, a Dutch manager expressed discomfort with signing the document, calling it un-Dutch. So the manager was concerned about balancing the Swedish manager's desire for formal commitment with the Dutch manager's cultural discomfort. So guys, what do you think the financial manager should do to get the team formal commitment? For me, to obtain the team's formal commitment while respecting cultural difference, the financial manager should consider adapting their approach in the ways of understand cultural preference. So the manager can reveal alternative way the Dutch team prefers to show commitment, and manager can do collective commitment approach. I think the Dutch manager felt uneasy with individual commitment, so the US manager or financial manager could propose a group-based commitment rather than individual ones. The manager can also do verbal agreement or informal methods. The manager can do a group meeting where all members express their support for the system. And the last is aligned with Swedish management's expectations. So the manager could explain the cultural difference to the Swedish head and suggest that an informal commitment might be more effective than a formal signature-based approach. So this situation can also be analyzed using several of Trompener's 7 cultural dimensions. The financial manager reflects a universalistic approach where rules and formal agreements apply to everyone, while the Dutch manager suggests a more particularistic approach where relationship and context are more important. And this case also contains about individualism and collectivism dimensions, and also the signing commitment reflect of clarify specific role, and the Dutch manager unis with this suggests a diffuse relationship preference where relationships are more integrated. And also formal commitment may indicate as achievement-oriented. For the Dutch manager might come from a more ascriptive culture where authority and trust are based on experience. Okay, the next discussion is chapter 6 about culture and style of management. And the objective of this session is to appreciate the effect of cultural values on managerial practices, understand how management practices are shaped by the cultural preference of manager, and the last is recognize various perspectives on the concept of cultural values. The conceptualization of culture has evolved from static models that view culture as fixed set of value and norms to more dynamic and relational perspective. So traditional theories such as those by Hofstede and Trompenaars often rely on universal criteria to classify cultures, which can oversimplify and overlook cultural complexity. In contrast, contemporary approaches like those proposed by Soderbergh, Holden, and Goldstrup view culture as a dynamic, ever-evolving phenomena shaped by ongoing interaction and contextual factor. We start this chapter discussions with management tasks and cultural values. There are many activities performed by manager and professional across all society on which cultural value have a considerable effect, but we have 5 management tasks in international business. Includes planning, it when company establishing goals and objectives. The second is organizing, it dividing and coordinating work and efficiently using research to meet organizational objectives. And the third is staffing, it hiring and assigning employee to positions. Also directing, it's leading and communicating with employee to guide them toward organizational goals. And the last is controlling, it monitoring and evaluating performance of the employee and the organization. So these 5 tasks are examined through the lens of cultural values, which affect how they are performed and managed across different cultural contexts. Let's get right to the effect of cultural values on management. So there is framework that focusing on aspects such as time, space, and communication, and this framework will be used in practical activities to enhance cross-cultural effectiveness. First, time focus, monochronic and polychronic. The difference of time focus affect management practices, with monochronic culture using formal meeting for setting clear deadline, while polychronic cultures focus more on discussion and informal decision making. The second is time orientation. Cultures can be oriented toward the past, present, or future, and these orientations influence their approach to planning and decision making. The third is power, hierarchy, and equality. In hierarchical cultures, power is unequally distributed with clear authority lines where managers make decisions. While in equality-oriented cultures, power disparities are minimized and managers take a participative approach. Organizations often balance between control and empowerment, navigating formal authority while promoting participation. Competition, competitive and cooperative. Competitive cultures emphasize wealth, performance, and innovation, valuing profit and individual responsibility. In contrast, cooperative cultures prioritize a pleasant work environment, relationship, and consensus over financial gain. Action or activity, doing and being. Cultures with being orientation focus on spontaneous self-expression and present experience, valuing social harmony and living in the moment. In contrast, doing cultures emphasize measurable accomplishment and personal achievement driven by challenges and external recognition. Space, private and public. Space orientation refers to cultural difference in the perception and use of personal and public space. This concept relates to how people manage their personal boundaries and the extent to which they are comfortable sharing different levels of their personality with others. The next is communication, high context and low context. For example, the US is characterized as a low context culture where clarity and directness are valued, while Japan is considered high context where understanding often depends on the situational context and subtle cues. The last is structure, individualism, and collectivism. In individualistic culture, personal goals and independence are prioritized over group conformity. Conversely, collectivist cultures prioritize the group needs over individual desires. We also have other views on cultural values. The first is integrating values. The reconciliation process in cultural dilemmas can lead to the creation of a third dimension, where values from both sides are integrated through synergy. This approach is more effective than simply trading of values and reflects the complexity and unpredictability of modern international business. The next is cultural patterns. Culture is more dynamic and interactive than static, with groups sharing patterns of meaning and interpretation rather than belonging to fixed cultural communities. These shared patterns can be adapted and negotiated through interaction, and the managers involved in globalization are more likely to engage with this fluid concept of culture. It focusing on effective interaction within multicultural teams. And the last point is culture is not a set of values. Early argues that culture should be viewed as the meaning people attach to their surrounding rather than just a set of values. Early linked the culture to action, highlighting individual behaviors and cognitive process. He introduced the concept of cultural intelligence, which examines how individuals adapt to different culture settings. So for today's session, we already discussed about entrepreneurs' culture dimension, classify culture based on how they handle dilemmas, linking to Kluckholm and Stockback value orientation concept, and it highlights the impact of this cultural value and business and management, with dilemmas resolved differently depending on cultural context. Trompenaar's model of reconciliation is emphasized for its dynamic approach to resolving cultural difference, and this chapter also explores how cultural value influence managerial tasks and question whether cultures are stable or dynamic, suggesting that values can evolve through interaction. And finally, it encourages reflection on individual cultures, cultural values, and work style. And that's all for today's class session. Thank you for listening. See you in the next meeting. Bye bye.